As a seller, when it comes to appraisal, you can control it to a certain degree. For example, perception is everything. As a seller, always putting your best foot forward when we're first listing, right? Because we're selling to the buyer. Now you want to have that great smell. You want to have that great vibe, because it is a human involved, and humans do respond emotionally. Although appraisers are supposed to lean more on the numbers and not so much the emotion.
Yeah.
They're supposed to be more objective than your buyer.
No pressure.
It's Pete.
And I'm Mark, and we're the Real Estate Dream Team.
Oh my gosh, Mark, why the heck should they listen to yet another real estate podcast? Well, I will share my why, and that is we'd love to tell you how to get those keys the smart way.
And help you crank those gears that turn your dreams into homes.
There you go. Let's
roll, baby.
Let's dive into the fact that not only the buyer has to get approved, but the property has to get approved too. The property, as a seller, you have to put your best foot forward, because that appraiser, what is an appraiser? He's just a human being.
He's boots on the ground for the lender, and the lender is who's deciding, is this house, not only is the buyer, but is the house, the property that's been identified by the buyer as their one, is it worth writing a check for?
Because the house is the collateral for the lender to give you the money, meaning that if you never make a payment, that value of the house pays the lender back.
Can they sell it on the courthouse steps, which do, in fact, side note, exist in Texas? They really do, every month.
It's a show. You should go on.
Every county, every month.
It's free.
But we digress.
Yes.
Anyway.
Back to appraisal.
Back to appraisals. Yeah. Sorry. Squirrels are habits. So the appraisal is an hour moment in the real estate transaction process. It is one of the key gears to getting those keys. And an appraisal an appraiser is a human that goes out and actually walks the home, actually walks it. They take pictures, they measure, they evaluate. And depending on the type of the loan you have as a buyer, depends on how deeply they evaluate.
There's levels.
There are levels.
And they do have guidelines as to how they value a house. But those guidelines are subjective. That means that they can use their own judgment, which means that it's an opinion of value. It's not fact. Okay. So just because somebody says your house is worth X doesn't mean the market will actually pay you X. So,
except for the fact that their opinion has weight. And
yes,
that is,
that's true.
it can be the difference whether the lender says thumbs up, we're clear to go. I'm ready to write a check for you, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, or if the lender says, heck no, we're going to have to reevaluate.
So, let's take the worst case scenario, and the appraisal comes in low, below what you, the buyer, has contracted for. What are the options, Bess? What can the buyers do?
There's actually four options. One is to say, well, and terminate and walk away. All right. Two is to say, hey, seller, we are $10,000 below our contract plot price. What do you think about splitting?
Right.
We'll bring $5,000 more to the table to closing day, keys day. Would you be open to dropping the contract price by $5,000? And 5 plus 5 equals 10. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is just balls out and say, hey, seller, sorry, house is worth $10,000 less than what we discussed, so we're going to walk. Or are you open to just changing the purchase price by $10,000? And then the last choice, if you're a buyer, everyone's least favorite, which is the seller digging in their heels and saying, take it or leave it. So then you as a buying team have to look at each other and say, do we want to write a check for $10,000? And how does that $10,000 manifest itself when you write a check? That means your down payment, maybe you're a first-time home buyer or a second-time home buyer, so either 3.5, or 5%. Now you're taking whatever that 5% is, for example, and adding another just straight up $10,000 on top of that.
So it's an extra
choices.
$1,000 you have to pay. But, in those scenarios, typically what I end up doing is I do calculations that shows the buyer how long will it take me to recoup that $10,000. And a lot of times you'd be surprised. Depends on the price range, depends on the neighborhood. But you'd be surprised how quickly you make that 10,000.
Sometimes it's 6 months.
Yeah. So,
Crazy.
and sidebar, actually, the same thing holds true. And when you have somebody like Bess working with you, you won't make this mistake. People walk away from negotiations on the front end when they first make offers over $10,000 when $10,000 paid to get the house, and it requires you to pay $10,000 more to beat another buyer. That $10,000 in the scheme of things is not that much money.
Scheme being defined as amortized, broken out
Right.
over the course of your 30-year loan.
Or even just 5 or 7 years. If you're like the average homeowner, you're gonna buy this house for 5 to 7 years. You really love the house and want the house. The extra $10,000 is really not that much money. So think twice before walking away from negotiations or from appraisals, because you probably still want the house. And if you have the wherewithal to get the $10,000, then do it.
Mhm.
Because in the long run, I think you'd be better off in 90% of the cases, you're better off buying that house than finding another house where you have to do inspections all over again and appraisal and all that stuff
Mhm.
versus, hey, honey, let's just write a check for $10,000.
So let's circle back around to appraisal. It is part of closing costs.
Yeah.
It does average about $650, $700. It is a closing cost most buyers pay for ahead of time.
Yeah.
Before
Small.
closing day, keys day.
Yeah.
And it's a driving force. It really is. Quick share how it almost sounds formulaic. Okay, sure. So the appraiser is hired by the lender via a third-party contractor. The appraiser goes out to the house. Sure, no big deal. He measures it. He takes pictures. He notes deficiencies of concern if your loan mandates it. FHA and VA, for example, are loan types that do mandate a physical assertion of what's concerning.
They actually all do, even on conventional loans. The appraiser is meant to look at your foundation, your roof, major systems. They are supposed to know anything that could decrease the value of the house. And it's to protect.
Fair enough. Yes, but there is still a human factor involved in that. I had a conventional loan that got flagged I was representing the seller. We had a conventional loan, which, side note, talking about our squirrel chasing that we seem to be doing today, it was a multiple bid, and we did pick a conventional over an FHA with the understanding generally that FHA always asks for more repairs. They are a little bit more challenging. Let's call them. Yes. And so we were a little surprised of when this 1950 home that's on Pier and Bean that has gorgeous oak floors, that the conventional came back with a flag because there was about a coaxial size hole in every single room in the floor. And the conventional appraiser said this home is not worth what we said it was worth because it has, in these gorgeous original oak floors, there's a little hole. He called it the size of a dime. And when I called him to ask him to clarify, I said, do you think maybe it's the same size as a 1980s a coaxial cable? And he was like, oh, possibly.
He would never give you definitive.
Okay. So, so speaking of appraisals and getting called out, like, how did we resolve that?
Yes.
Well, we were required as sellers to repair it before closing. And so, yes. So me and some wood putty and my handyman went over there and filled all those holes in, took pictures. That's off record. And sent pictures, and it's closed and funded and all the things. But
the appraiser is trying to protect the lender from any kind of devaluation of the house, but also protects you against making a mistake by overbidding on a house. So but it is a subjective thing, and it's an opinion of value. It doesn't really mean the value is whatever you think the house is worth.
true.
Whatever the market thinks the house is worth is a value. And for 30 years, I've said, I don't care what the appraiser says. The market, by the mere fact that you have multiple offers, means the house is undervalued. So if the appraiser comes back and says it's overvalued, he doesn't know what he's talking about, or she.
But remember, it's all about fiduciary, right? So the appraiser's fiduciary relationship is not to the buyer, even though the buyer is actually writing his check and paying him. It's a little bit odd, but the fiduciary is to the lender writing the big check,
Yes.
the $1 million check. It's kind of an odd situation when you break it down like that. And that is the buyer is not getting necessarily protected in a directly. Now you are being protected as a buyer by way of not having surety that you're not overpaying. Uh, because if it does come back less, then there's a whole nother
But
negotiation.
it's not 100%. It's not
Mhm.
something you can hang your hat on. I've had buyers who 2 years after buying put the house back on the market expecting to, have a higher sales price. In the meantime, their neighborhood went downhill, and they said, "Well, the appraisal a year and a half ago showed this value. Now you're saying it's even less than that. How can that be?" Well, things change, right?
Mhm.
And that opinion of value is no longer valid, and maybe that opinion of value in the first place was too high. That can happen too. So it's
Mhm.
not a given that it's, your appraiser means, you could turn around the very next day and sell it for the same.
Right. So so appraisal bottom line, it's one of the gears to get you the keys and or if you're a seller to get you the cash. Not foolproof. Is and
Black and white.
it's not black and white. It is not black and white. But as a seller, we've been talking about the buyer, but as a seller, when it comes to appraisal, you can control it to a certain degree. For example, perception is everything. So as a seller, you're always putting your best foot forward when we're first listing, right? Because we're selling to the buyer. Now, once we're under contract, we're selling to the appraiser, to the boots on the ground by that lender. And so, yes, you do want it's almost all over again. You want to have that great smell. You want to have that great vibe because it is literally boots on the ground. It is a human involved, and humans do respond emotionally. Although appraisers are supposed to lean more on the numbers and not so much the emotion,
Yeah.
they're supposed to be more objective than your buyer. Uh, and they are for the most part, but I have had an appraiser, one in particular that I can think of, said off record that he had all these reasons, but he's like the number one reason the traffic getting to this property was hellacious. And I was like, well, that explains why we were like $31,000 below contract price because he'd had a bad day. He took it out on my seller.
Yeah, let's talk for a quick second about
Yeah, please.
what can we do. So, you can ask for a reevaluation and a reevaluation of the opinion of that appraiser. That can only be done if you have proof, if you have actual closings that are comparable to the house that you're trying to buy. So they need to be within a certain distance and size wise, they need to be
Mhm.
a certain way in order to be comparable. And so, but in my experience, that really doesn't change the value very often. Very often, now you're fighting your opinion versus their opinion, and they are
Egos start getting involved.
that's
Uh,
you can try it and you should try it if it comes to that point. You should try that. I have seen it where they were off MLS sales that happen outside of MLS that the appraiser may not have seen,
yes.
had access to. Those can't change the value. I've seen that work. But what I find most often is appraisers have made a mistake or have wrong information about the house, mainly about the square footage. That they that they measure a room incorrectly, or that they don't include a room that was air conditioned because they didn't see that it was air conditioned. They assumed it was. There are all kinds of reasons why they get the square footage wrong. But if you think about it, if you're buying a $250 square foot house, it doesn't take many missed square feet to miss,
To add up.
10,000 difference
Mhm.
in value. So, talk to your real estate professional. If that happens, the lender will certainly talk to them and say, hey, what can we do about this? And can we fight this appraisal?
Mhm.
And there's ways to do that. It just, it happens maybe a third of the time that the value does get increased. But 2/3 of the time it doesn't. So don't get your hopes up about it.
But talking about tying into Mark's comment about substantial information, i.e., from your real estate professional, off market deals, you as a seller, what are some real life things you can do to help your appraisal, help your buyer, help your agent move forward? Is certainty. Certainty equals dollars in the selling the house game. And that would be having on the counter, if you don't already, receipts of your HVAC system that was recently replaced, receipts of your 30-year roof that was recently replaced, receipts of your contractor that came through and changed that spare room into a real live air conditioned space with a split and all the other things. You can help tremendously by just saying, hey, this is why this and this and this and this. This is a receipt for the $45,000 8-foot board on board fence that we installed. That sort of, those are real live touchy feely things with numbers that enable the appraiser to include those or at least give a nod to them in some fashion. So if he's in between two numbers, he might go ahead and give you the nudge up that you need because he's got touchy feely stuff. That's one thing that's an outgrowth from 2008 when we had that bubble, and that is the whole appraisal system was reevaluated. It used to be before 2008 that appraisers had tight relationships directly with lenders, directly with Mark. Now, legally, they cannot. They have to have a filter between them called basically a third party agency that they work for. And so, because of that, appraisers are now more generalists, whereas before they were more neighborhood experts. I had an appraiser recently that lives in Prosper, and he came down to appraise a house in East Dallas. And it's proven to be a little bit of a challenge because most of the homes in the Prosper area are brand new suburban national builder perfect. And most of the homes in East Dallas, I mean, a new home is built in the 90s. So it's a horse of a different color completely. And so that does present its own challenges. So you do need to be much more proactive as a seller as far as endearing your property to the appraiser's heart to kind of boost up that value as best as you
The
can.
best chance. Yes.
Absolutely.
So thanks for
Absolutely.
joining us today on this lowdown on appraisals that we just had. And if you have follow-up questions, please reach out to us. We'd love to answer them for you. Come to us next time for our next episode and like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.